Hello friends, TechMen Pat here. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we are going on an adventure. Yay! Today we are going to go and have a look how the NBN gets to your home and mainly the fiber to the node system. We're going to have a look at the technology behind it on location, and we're going to start from the node and we're going to end up right back at my house at the actual point where the internet comes out. And obviously we're going to learn about all the technology being used. So if you ever wanted to know about how fiber to the node actually works, or at least looks like, and how it goes back to your home, well, this is the video for you. If you already know and you just want to hear me chat about it and wear M&M shirts, then again, this is a video for you guys. So let's start at the first location. We're going to jump to the node and let's give you a little history about what it is and what it can do.
A pillar is a connection point for copper phone cables. Usually they appear in gray pillars like this. If you ever seen them open, they have columns of copper wires, cable connections. Sometimes pillars actually are underground and they pull them out for modifications. Copper lines are typically connected across nearby pillars or Telstra cable pits, which we'll have a look in a minute. And they terminate at the Ekel-LeCant module node. I hope I said that correctly. Which is on this side is essentially a set of 384 VDSL modems. There's a whole lot of other stuff which can go on, but basically at this point these cables are connected to an optical fiber that goes back to the next box across, which is your NBN Co node. That node requires power supplies and connection back to a backup battery. They connect phone lines of ADSL2 Plus and normal phone services and communication back to exchange optical fiber. RM cabinets can be quite a bit larger than NBN nodes, but this is the main connection we have on this street. Guys, we'll catch you in the next spot. It's raining.
So guys, we're here at the pit and we're gonna go have a quick look inside what the actual cable looks like, because I bet you 30 years of cable lying there is gonna be pretty messy. And what we've got here is a lot of growth from the grass. Suggest to rip that up. I mean, it's not really gonna do anything to the cable. The cable itself is just lying there. There's nothing else there apart from a little joint point. And that's about it. It's going to be very dirty in there. It could even flood sometimes. So if it's flooded, see if you can get the water out or somehow get the cable to be above the water. It was actually quite moist in there. Some of the cable is already wet, which is kind of concerning. I mean, Telstra, NBN, nobody comes in to have a look at this stuff. They just go, oh yep, it's connected and it seems to work. As you can see, it's spliced together with this kind of heat shrink. It seems to be holding. It seems fine. It's the little metal bits at the end are a little bit rusted, but as you can see, the cable itself is just all in the ground under the sand, and there's nothing I can do about it at all. Because if you are not an ACMA accredited technician cabler, you're basically not allowed to do anything to this cable. So if you want somebody to come out and clean this up, or at least, I don't know, check the cable if it's actually correctly, or if it's leaking or there's some damage to it, you will need somebody who is accredited. So as you can see, it goes into the house through this little Telstra tube. It goes through the brick, there's a little hole, and that black cable goes all the way up into the roof into a termination point. This termination point is installed by a ACMA accredited installer, and I can just plug the phone line straight into the roof and run that cable anywhere I want from the roof, because it's just a loose plug-in cable. Now, for some residential situations and some small businesses, the network boundary is typically where the carrier lead-in cable terminates to a socket, the first socket. That first socket is part of the carrier's responsibility, and that's why it needs to be done by a registered cabler. And this one here sits inside the roof that I mentioned before. However, as you can see here, some older houses and houses that have been cabled incorrectly have lead-in cables terminating and distributing to other sockets. It's called star wiring, before the actual first socket. Prior to deregulation of premises cabling in 1989, it was common practice in some areas to star wire TOs from a connection device or joint in the lead-in cable. In such cases, each star wire TO is potentially the network boundary for the cable termination on it. In the deregulated environment, this creates problems for both Telstra and the cabling provider, which is now NBN. But NBN and Telstra are not obliged to reconfigure existing star wired installations. So there's no obligation to reconfigure the cabling, but the carrier is only obliged in this particular configuration to maintain the service to the first socket after the building entry point, which is difficult to determine for both Telstra and cabling providers. This is why Telstra is happy to authorize a registered cabling provider to reconfigure the wiring if the need or opportunity arises.
So my friends, we're here at the end where things come out, and I'll explain why it's missing in a second, but just as we saw, it goes to a telecom splitter, a very old one, and that splitter used to provide a connection of phone lines to every single room. Now it's been spliced back to a single line to provide this connection the best chance at succeeding, or rather getting the best speed. So it comes out here. So at the moment, this has been moved to another place in the home to not only shorten the wire, but also provide internet for the rest of the house by putting in Ethernet cables in each room. And not only that, but the modem used to sit here in the kitchen and had wires running from it to the TV, to another room. It was just unruly because the way it was done back in the day, or basically a couple of years ago, is you'd grab the telephone line that was probably in the kitchen or maybe in a spare room and just use that line. It was never in the best place. It was never specified where this internet connection was gonna go because it's just gonna be where a telephone would be. So having it here was a bit of a nuisance in a home, and I think a lot of homes, you might find that these points are in places where you'd imagine a telephone to be, but once you put a modem in, it kind of doesn't make sense to be there, so it's best to move anyway. And when you do move, you get to actually replace the wires potentially. So it's a good time to do it if you're moving a wire. Get somebody to come in, move the wire, put it in a place like the office, run a couple of Ethernet cables to your rooms, and you should have a great internet setup in your home. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been a little bit informative what a fiber to the node system looks like, well, I guess what it looks like, what works and what doesn't, and how it feeds into a standard 30-year-old home. Friends, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in another video. Thank you.